That's why you should be coaching. And if you're coaching to win, you're losing if that's all you're coaching for.
Hey, Austin.
Hey, Dad, how are you?
Good. Each one of these podcasts, Austin, seem to get better and better every week. I get so excited with all these different people's stories. It amazes me what Papa does, that just how he takes our stories and crisscrosses each other's lives. It's been amazing. So today, though, our journey takes us to Mississippi as we take a look inside Mississippi Juco football and two of its most decorated coaches. Their accolades speak for themselves. Winningest active coach in NJCAA, six-time coach of the year, Hall of Fame, both of them, All-American, silver medalist, the pioneering spirit of a trailblazer, the first female coach in NJCAA history, greatest athlete in Mississippi University women's history, number 50 on the Sports Illustrated 20th Century, 50 greatest sports figures in Mississippi. But this is a story about influence, an unwavering partnership, a message rooted in faith that has left a legacy far beyond the field. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host today. And alongside me is my son, Austin, and would like to welcome Team Murphy as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Gene, Dot. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. We're excited.
Same here.
Well, let's just jump right into when you were just growing up in the homes that you had. And I don't care who goes first, but tell us a little bit about your family, parents, siblings, and describe your childhood.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'm an only child, so most people automatically think you are spoiled. But believe you me, my mother tore me up many times. My dad was a coach just at high schools in Mississippi for a few years, and then we returned back to their roots in Octavia County when I was going into the second grade. And we're surrounded by, my mother was one of 10 children.
Wow.
And my dad was one of 5. And so we have a great extended family. And of course, my brothers and sisters were really my cousins,
Mm-hmm.
But they were both believers, and they took me to church. I feel like the older I get, I realize how blessed I was to be able to grow up in a home, like I grew up. They were very encouraging and not critical. My dad could tell me how many mistakes I made in a basketball game, but it was, it took me a long time to get to the point to realize that you get better when somebody tells you where you're the weakest. So I had a wonderful childhood. I grew up in Octavia County, and my mom worked at Mississippi State, so it was just a great place to grow up in.
Thank you, Gene. What about you growing up?
Well, I grew up in Knoxville County in Bigby Valley, Mississippi, which is about 12 miles east of Brooksville, Mississippi. And
Let me interrupt there. When we first met, you had to turn around and come back out. You couldn't keep going the road.
But for most people to sort of target where that is, I tell them this is about 25 minutes south of Columbus, Mississippi. And as Doc said, most of my life, the Tombigbee River was the end point. That's where the road ended down there. So my dad, I grew up on a little 100-acre cattle farm, and my dad, he had an 8th grade education, and I'll tell you this because his father was killed in a tornado when he was 12 years old, and but he's one of the smartest men looking back, I had to get old enough to be able to see this, but he was smart, one of the smartest men that I had the privilege of being around. And you know, my athletic, I guess you say, start of my athletic career was in a little school by the name of Brooksville Elementary. And I remember it well. When I was in 8th grade, I was able to start at running back. The first time I ever had touched the ball, I guess you'd say, because I'd always been in the offensive line. And that also was the first year that I can remember my dad ever coming to a ball game. When we had little Pee Wee junior high things in those younger years, but and I was privileged to have what very positive influence coaches such as David Butler and Wayne Stewart there in Knoxville County. And then when I went on to East Mississippi, I had Bill Buckner, who was very influential in at that stage in my life. And I always referred back to Bill as a mentor, and had the privilege of coming to Hines in 83 and worked under Bill for several years before he took over the state FCA director.
Mhm.
But I definitely understood hard work ethic growing up there under my father and mother. And another thing, as I look back on my life there in those younger years, I could see how God was working with me and the kind of people that I ended up coaching in my nearly 40-year career. So, and what I meant by that is I had a lot of players, as I'm sure you had, Ken, that came from very difficult environments. And as I said, as I look back on it, I can see God prepared me to be able to communicate and work with those kind of people. And so this has been a career of ministry with you know, we talk about accolades, and as I'm listening to you two guys and different people y'all had on podcasts, the real success or measure success of a person, particularly in athletics, is what kind of legacy, what do they leave with the people around them? And what kind of influence, what kind of real impact. And that's been real important in my coaching career, as well as in dealing with people even outside of coaching.
Thank you, Coach. And this, again, is for both of you. Do you have a favorite childhood memory? And maybe what was unique about growing up in Mississippi that someone that's never been to Mississippi might say, wow, that is unique?
She got a lot of unique stories. I don't know that.
Well, one memory is, when you look back, you see God's hand in things. My dad coached football, basketball, and baseball. And in the annual at Louis High School, which is in Humphreys County, it's no longer there. But there's a picture of the Louis High School Panther football team. And I'm holding a football sitting on his knee in that picture. Sometimes you just, that's something that, he would take me to basketball practice. And we lived on campus, and we had a lady that their family lived on campus that would come keep me during the day with my parents before I started school. And I loved it. I still love the memories that I have, from that small place, and have reconnected to many of the people that my dad coached years ago. And that's been, very rewarding. I guess I've always wanted to be outside, and I have 32 cousins on my mom's side, first cousins on my mom's side.
Wow.
And a lot of them my age. I had a cousin that was 6 months older than me that was a girl, but the rest of them were guys. So, you played with who, we lived out in the country, and a lot of them lived around the area that we grew up in. And so you played with who you could. And, that put you in the middle of football games in the yard, or baseball, or whatever. So I have a lot of fond memories like that. But my dad taught me to say when I was very young, you go up to a little kid and say, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or what are you going to be? And my reply, he taught me to say, I'm going to play basketball for my daddy and spend all his money. and that, basketball was a great love that I God instilled in me before I was born, probably, because I loved going to practice. I remember when I actually made my first goal, and it was during one of the girls' practice there at Louise, and I still have a good memory of that. And just, little things that you don't really, when you're going through it, you don't really see the uniqueness of some things. But when you get older and look back, and then you think about how, wow, this was a thought when I was younger. My parents, like I said, was very encouraging. I went to small school, Maven High School, through the 9th grade, and I was, I was moved up to the high school track team in the 7th and the basketball team in the 8th, and actually got to run and, play with older kids. And I just loved it. I mean, I loved practice. I loved playing. Had no idea what kind of ability I had. I just loved it, and to look at the doors that God has opened, that as I've aged and I look back on, you can see his hand through even with Gene. I remember after I was through playing college ball, I was just kind of ready to move on. The girls didn't have the WNBA or anything at that time. And I can remember being on my knees in Martin, Tennessee, at the University of Martin, which is where Pat Summit went to college, for those that know about girls basketball, and being on my knees saying, God, please bring a godly man into my life. And just in tears, it's hard to give stuff up sometimes. So, but within 2 months, this guy who at that time had a head full of hair, we happened to have a graduate class together at Mississippi State, and I slowed down just enough for him to catch me.
I like the way she puts it.
You just, it all unfolds as we age. Those are some special memories. And I had a Sunday school teacher at one point in time at Self Creek Baptist Church who said, don't be unequally yoked. Of course, talking about, marrying a godly person. And I don't remember which teacher it was, but I remember my teacher saying to us, if you have to ask them, are they a Christian? You might better think about what's going on. And that stuck in my mind. Now, why? Because God stuck it there to be a constant reminder, because I did not have to ask Gene. He asked me. But, he shared his faith, and that was a clear sign. So I thought, you better slow down, girl. Let this guy in your life. And it'll be 49 years in December that we've been married. Wow. So he's put up with me a long time.
Thank you, Dot. That's wonderful. What about you, Gene? Any favorite memory or something unique about growing up in Mississippi?
Well, I think that, the area that I grew up in, way out there in the country, and, as I reflect back on it, there were some really good people. Um, and but you asked about a memory. And my dad became a Christian at an older age. I don't remember exactly. I mean, I was a young teenager, and I don't know what got us started in a little old country church not that far up the road. But uh, when he became saved, I really began to see in other words, Scripture talks about we become a new creation. I began to see a real change in his life, and I'm certain that was a big factor in me looking at my own life at that young age. Because as I've reflected back on it through the years, uh, my life could have took a really negative turn. These different things, the accolades you mentioned, could have not been any part of my life. And, it's just a great, I know we're all, as Christians, a reflection of God's grace and love, but I definitely see so much grace in my life, and looking back from that point in time.
Thank you.
Now you both talked about your fathers. Is there a memorable conversation that we'll go Gene or we'll go Dot you first and then Gene you second? Memorable conversation you had with your dad?
How many? He was a coach at heart, and he continued to coach when I started playing. I could remember sometimes at 2:30 in the morning, he was still telling me all the mistakes I made, but it was never out of anger. It was he had a sense of urgency to make me realize where I had to get better. I wasn't there yet, but it's we were my mom and dad. We were all three very close, and they parented me together. My dad, I don't think he ever spanked me, but he didn't have to. Little girls don't just want daddies usually if they get enough love from their dad. So we had quite a few, but once we moved to Starkville, and I transferred to Starkville High School, and we had some pretty good teams then, and it was rewarding. I realized that he was a big reason why I was able to do the things that I did, and I was as far along maybe at that time as I was because he coached his heart out, trying to help me. But both my parents were always encouraging and letting me know that if you want it bad enough and you work hard enough, you don't know what can happen, probably I remember my senior year, there were a lot of others, but I didn't have a car. Back then, everybody didn't have a vehicle, and my parents both worked and used the two vehicles that we had. But we won the Little Ten Championship for the first time in women's basketball, girls basketball at Starkville High School my senior year, and which is something to say because Starkville's had some really good teams, and we won overall state my sophomore year at Starkville, but we didn't win the Little Ten. Bonatoc High School beat us, and that was a big rivalry there. But it was in February, and we played for the finals of the Little Ten Championship. And when that game was over, my dad was so excited, and he handed me keys to my new car.
Oh,
So that's
that's a good memory.
Yeah.
What about you, Gene?
Well, as I mentioned, my dad's father was killed when he was 12 years old, and of course I have reflected on this as a father, and I've seen it over and over with the athletes, as I'm sure Ken you have. Is many that become fathers, they got a clue what they're doing. And my dad, he certainly was a driver, excessively in some ways of getting things done, and different aspects of being a father. That his communication. I mean, it didn't take you long to figure out sort of what he wanted or what his expectations. But him sitting down and trying to communicate with you, or talk to you, or I didn't have much of those kind of conversations. I think my mother helped bridge some of that gap. Even I like me mentioning 8th grade, the first time he came to a game. He worked a lot, but even in my athletic career and even somewhat in my coaching career, it wasn't many of those conversations where he sit down and said, "Well, son, this or that, you could get better at this," or what. It wasn't. It was really a different setting or set of circumstances than what Doc describes, and so that, even though I guess for myself there was difficulty in being able to see some of the things I needed to see from my father, as he grew in his Christian experience and spiritually became more mature. I could see him beginning to reach out more, and in my coaching years, particularly at Hines, I could see him trying to convey different things, and he was always proud of the different things that we were blessed in accomplishing there at Hines. But as I said before, I look back on it in my own youth and growing up. I see how God was preparing me to deal with a lot of those kind of athletes, student athletes, that came up in a similar situation, and many of them much worse situation because there was no active father or absent of a father. So there were those are kind of things that I remember.
Thank
If
you.
that's answering the question.
Oh, absolutely. So Dot and then Gene, tell us about, some more things about your high school experience. Obviously, Dot, you talked a little bit about your basketball team and stuff like that. And then also tell us some people that spoke into your life, maybe besides your parents, that played a role in help you grow up.
Oh goodness. Well, we moved into Starkville the summer before I went into the 10th grade, which meant that I had to change school. And I'm working out with the team from my high school all summer long. And my dad came in and we're moving into Starkville and you're going to Starkville High School next year. He didn't ask. I was aware. He had taken me to a couple of their girls' basketball games, and I knew they had a good program. They'd gone to state the year before, but it was in that day and time. You just, if your parents said you're going to do this, you do it. And my parents were obviously very trustworthy, and so it was hard for me to leave the friends that I'd had since I was in the 2nd grade, and and all that. But wow, what an opportunity God put in my pathway, playing with many, great players. My coach that moved me from, the junior high basketball team up to the high school team at Maven High School was Coach Ernest Bigham, who was from the Pontotoc area, and that's a basketball mecca up in North Mississippi. And but I had a very mild-mannered coach, and Coach Sam Parker at Starkville High School, and even though Starkville was not a small school, it was a family, and other coaches. I was fortunate to have a coach that one of my first cousins married, G.T. Timms, who was from Brandon, Mississippi, and he married one of my cousins from Starkville, and he was a coach on. He was really a football coach, but he went with the girls' basketball team a lot, and he was a really great guy, and he was always encouraging, and that he was, definitely a blessing, and to get on that, to be able to play on that team that at Christmas was undefeated. Some of my dreams were beginning to come true. My freshman year at Maven, we had 4 freshmen starting on the high school teams. We weren't very good, and then to go into a program that had been successful, it was a wonderful community to grow up in, and it was like the community helps raise a child. Everybody in Starkville knew who my dad was, so you don't get in trouble because by the time you get home, he's already heard about it from somebody,
Right.
And we had an FCA that I was in. That was all helpful, but the summer before I knew I was going to Starkville, my dad, Coach G.T. Timms from Starkville, Coach Sam Parker was a fabulous coach, but Coach Timms helped him. And my dad came in, and through Coach Timms, he knew Coach Gwen White, who was from Clinton, but at that time was coaching at Canton High School, and she had first girls basketball camp in the state, and probably in the South, and they weren't team camps, they were individual camps. And my dad had talked with Coach Timms DT about it, and he got it lined up, and he said, we're going to camp, and it was at Mississippi College, and I think Coach White had a lot of really good, some of the best basketball players in Mississippi that worked as counselors at that camp, and many of them were Christians, and we had devotion every night and at camp, and I began to realize there's more to life than just playing basketball. It's a tool. Basketball needs to be your tool, but that was a big turning point, I think, in my love for the game, but to kind of see where God was working, and we were fortunate. It was not because of me that we won state and overall that year, and then 2 years later we won state and gave the game away in overall that we shouldn't have. But it was not. We were a team. It didn't matter who got the credit. And in fact, when I first started playing, it was 3 on offense and 3 on defense because girls couldn't run full court. That slow game. But Carol Walker was a member of that team. She was a senior my sophomore year, an outstanding basketball player, would be an outstanding player today. Her father was Wade Walker, who was the athletic director of Mississippi State, and there were others. And I mean, it was just everybody had a role, and you learn how to play it. And I got frustrated at one point in time because I thought, okay, in the 7th grade, I got to play on the offensive end. Well, when you moved me up to high school in the 8th grade, I didn't get to play on offense unless we were way behind or way ahead. And I had to go to defense. All I could do, that's where I started on defense. And then in the 9th grade, the 3 forwards on our team graduated. And so in my 9th grade year, I played offense. And when I went to Starkville, we had 3 seniors coming up on the offensive end, and he moved me back to defense. And I did get to play some offense, but that's not where I was drilling, myself. I thought, gosh, how am I ever going to really get good if I can't stick with just one thing, Well, God's wisdom. my senior year, we went to roving, where you had 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and 2 players that went full court. And then when I went to the W the following year in college, it was 5 men. So we think we know so well, but God was preparing me for playing 5 women ball, I guess you would call it. It's just, I guess I'm just you're raised in a church and you taught right from wrong and you want to do the right thing, and all that. But when as I age, things that were so important to me back then have they're not primary in the picture. They're kind of the icing on the cake, maybe. But the real thing is you see God's hand working in your life, and it just proves that Scripture is true and that God has a purpose for every one of us. We don't know what it is. Sometimes we don't like what we're going to have to go through or what we're going through, but I'm old enough now to realize just how wonderful and how loving of a God that we have. If we could just put ourselves aside and surrender to Him 100%. I had a hard time doing that for a long time.
What about you, Gene? How was your high school experience and some of the people that played a role in you growing up?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the 2 coaches that were impactful in my life was Wayne Stewart and David Butler. David Butler, he grew up not far from that country church and his family, and so I knew him before he ever started coaching. I knew him off the field, you might say, and another guy as I was growing up that was a mentor outside of coaching was a man by the name of Cecil Simmons, who grew up in that same area, and all 3 of those guys were impactful. And not long ago, I guess it was last summer, we were able to attend a reunion honoring that congregation that was in that small church, and had the privilege of seeing David Butler and just thanked him for being a mentor, and he just talking about, I was paying it forward. Well, much of what their influence on me, I was able to try to do the same thing for all the different student athletes and people that I have worked with through the years.
Well, let's jump to college, and we'll start with you, Gene. Tell us a little bit about your college experience. I know you went to Mississippi State, and then we'll bounce over to you, Dot, as well.
Well, as I said earlier, I started at East Mississippi, and thank goodness I did start at East Mississippi, because this little country boy would never survive college. And that transition of leaving home and being under Bill Buckner, and my second year as a sophomore, Jackie Reese, who was the defensive coordinator. Both of those guys are really good Christian guys that spent some time with us off the field. So I had some laying the groundwork to, you say, the kind of model. If a person was going to go into coaching, you'd want to be around those kind of people. I had the opportunity to, when I finished at East Mississippi, to go to Del State. It didn't last that long. I had a neck injury that I got in the off season trying to lift weights with a guy that was much stronger than me, but that competitive spirit. But anyway, long story short, as you alluded to, Ken, I finished at Mississippi State, and I had under influence of head of the physical education department, J.K. Jones, who I guess he was a number of years he coached. He's not out of Amory, but he took a lot of time with me, helped me get started when I finished college there at Philadelphia High School. But anyway, that was pretty much my college career. I learned a lot about Juco. I'm sure
So
some
Gene,
things that too.
most people, Gene, don't know where scuba is. How much has scuba changed today compared to when you went, or is it still the same?
Well, when I was at Hines, I always thought I was instrumental in one thing. They had that practice field that had a concrete base about 2 foot high. And we had a guy one night coming to the sideline making a tackle. He slid head first in that concrete, and of course, you know, they got a beautiful stadium, turf stadium now, and Turffield Stadium, and there are a number of things that change. But I always like to think that the people are the same. I've always been people that could communicate with the kind of students that came to East Mississippi in scuba, and you know, you'd have to be driving intentionally to miss scuba uh, between Meridian and Macon, but it was most influential in a positive way in my life, and so.
Well, Dot, we mentioned in the intro a little bit, and I'm not going to cover all of this because you have one heck of a bio. You go to Mississippi for women. A lot of people don't even know about that university. I've heard great things in my 10 years when I was in Mississippi about it. You were the first player to score 1,000 points. You had the opportunity to play in the World University Games, which you can tell us maybe about that a little bit. You were labeled the greatest athlete in Mississippi University for women's history. What goes through your heart and mind when you hear all of that?
God is good. And I just love playing. I just wanted to be as good as, I could be. I graduated from Starkville High School, and I actually went to Mississippi College for one semester.
Okay.
It was too far for my mama. It's in Clinton, Mississippi, which was about a 3-hour drive, and I transferred back to the W at Christmas break. And the coach at Mississippi College whose name is Ed Nixon, was a great coach, and he ended up having some great teams, and it had nothing to do with the school or the coaching, because Mississippi College is a fantastic university, or university now, but I could relax, and I was just happier once I transferred back closer. And when I look back on the things that I learned from those ladies that were in they call it kinesiology now, but we're in the physical education department, and there were so many of the ladies there that were willing to take a chance to step out to start a basketball team, to start a volleyball team, to start a track team, to start a gymnastic. A swim team. It was the Mississippi University for women, which it was Mississippi State College for women when I went there. The doors that they opened and paved for so many who came through those doors back in the day, how successful they've been. And, I look at it now as you have a beautiful building, but if the foundation, which we don't usually see, if it cracks and crumbles, the building will not stand. But these ladies were, along with Coach Gwen White, those ladies were so instrumental in making me who I am, good or bad, I guess. Today, they were dedicated, they worked hard, they were not afraid to take a chance. One lady in particular who I still stay in touch with now, Dr. Joanne Thomas, originally from Smithville, Mississippi, and has retired. She's in her 90s now, but she was married, she had 2 children, she worked, she ended up being able to get her doctorate from Mississippi State. uh, she was the first basketball coach there because some girls came to her and said, we want to have a basketball team. And she played basketball, but she'd never thought about, really coaching. And then a little later, they wanted to have a volleyball team. Well, she had gotten the head of the department to hire a basketball coach. And so she started a volleyball team. And Mississippi we didn't have volleyball back in that day much, except for the Big 8 schools. And but she stepped out again and coached volleyball for a while I was a student there. This along with their teaching job, we had some track girls that came in and they wanted to try to have a track team, and who started it? Dr. Joanne Thomas. And then you look at some of the other ladies that were there and the willingness to, if you want to try this, let's see what we can do. Boy, did that. I just had a wonderful education as far as you can pretty much, God's in control of your future, but you're in control of your choices. And don't be afraid. And Dr. Thomas is a wonderful Christian lady, and she's probably the backbone, a lot of the backbone of where I am today in my faith, because you don't have to question her. She would set you straight lovingly most of the time, but it was out of love, that she would say, this is not right, or you need to do this, and we had some words, but she always won. And those battles with those ladies, that they helped start the women's basketball as we see it today. I'm not saying that all the players were great or that I was great like the players that come out today, but the W was instrumental in bringing that to women in college, especially in the Southeast. And you do it well, you do it hard, you give it your best, and let God handle the rest. It's just when, like I said, I'm old enough now that I look back on things, and I see more, not of what I've done, but what has been done that fell my way that I could be a part of, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
There's some great players that have come through the W, and I am very humble for them to think that I was the greatest. But I know for a fact there were some great players that came through there, but there's not a record. There's not makes you wonder. In today's world, it's all about me and I, and you see so many people wanting attention, and these back then you played because you loved it. We had to pay for our food. It was just they were the strong foundation that helped put the women's basketball where it is today.
Well, I hope you're enjoying our podcast today, but I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Our nonprofit organization, The Win Awakening, is the reason we're able to have this podcast. The Win Awakening is a sports ministry network that began in November of 2022. The Win mission is to encourage and empower leaders to live from a place of victory as they awaken to their wholeness and true identity within environments where they can be known. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. If you'd like to support the Win Awakening, as well as our podcast, you can donate now at winawakening.org, and please spread the word about our ministry with your friends. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Awaken Kingdom Culture on our Spotify and YouTube channels to listen or watch our podcast weekly, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to follow my socials, as well as hear about the upcoming podcast news, watch the latest clips, and get an inside look at my life behind the scenes, you can follow us on Instagram at Awaken Kingdom Culture and Facebook, Awaken Kingdom Culture Podcast. Well, let's get back to the podcast. Don, let me ask you this question, as there's a little nugget that a lot of people don't know. In the World University Games, your roommate correct me if I'm wrong, was Pat Summitt.
That's right.
And most people that know anything about women's basketball know who Pat Summitt is. I'm just curious, either in that, let's say, I don't know how long that period of time was, but in your relationship as roommates or even in the years that followed, what was something Pat Summitt helped you grow in?
Oh, goodness. Her desire to be the best. She was highly driven, and as an athlete, obviously she was a Larry Bird kind of player. You better not give her a shot because she'd burn you. She didn't have great speed or jumping ability. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't what people today would think was great. But she was a Larry Bird type player. So she very seldom ever made a wrong step. I mean, she worked hard, and she did not know a lot about defense. And the coach at the W, was a defensive minded coach. And when we were training for that team, and Coach Upton was one of the coaches of that team, along with Coach Billy Moore from California. Pat, I mean, I'm out there just trying to get through 6 or 7 hours of practice a day, and she's her mentally, she was just dissecting the game, offensively, defensively. What do you do? What are you looking for when you're on defense, especially? But she was highly driven. The oldest daughter of, I think she had 3 or 4 older brothers, and a younger sister. And her dad put a light up in the hay barn, or tobacco loft, or whatever they called it in Tennessee, because her dad was a tobacco farmer. And she played with her brothers, and they were rough. I mean, she was raised, her dad was tough. I mean, she said you never doubted that he loved you, but boy, he was. She said when some of my friends planned a sweet 16 birthday party for me, and it was time to harvest tobacco, and my dad told me that I wouldn't be at my sweet 16 birthday party because they were whatever you do, cutting tobacco, hauling it, or whatever. She was tough, and she came. I mean, she just is an ideal picture of what you would like your player to be. Wow. And she studied, and she had a deep desire, and she took that desire and ran with it. And look at her record.
Yeah, she surely did well. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Austin, let's jump to life after college, Austin.
Yeah. But she was, I mean, she was determined. But she told me one time, before this is over, people are going to not remember. It was a girl that was considered pretty good back in that day. They're going to wonder who that is. They're going to know who I am, but they are going to wonder who she is. And that came true. I mean, she was a unique person, but a very caring person, and gave so much of herself and her time to all those kids that she coached. And she, they had the poll in the dressing room that she was at 100% that paid 4 years for her. There was 100% graduation rate for years. And she and Jean have a lot of qualities. I mean, you want to play, but you can't play if you don't have grades, and you got to get, she was great.
Austin, you're on mute.
I'm on mute.
No, Austin is.
No, I was.
Let's go to life after college, Austin.
Okay, so tell us when you knew you guys wanted to be a coach, and kind of the path that you took to get into coaching, and what inspired you to be a coach. So.
Well,
You warmed up pretty good. Go ahead.
I was debating on going into physical therapy or coaching. That was kind of where I was at that time. I just couldn't let go of the coaching because, Gwen White, who started those camps and everything, at one time there were just one or two women when I was coming through, very few women coaching high school basketball. And I just couldn't let it go. I just loved it so much. But I will tell you that I loved playing more than I loved coaching. And anyway, Gene and I married, and after our first child was born, I think he was probably a little over a year old, and we at the we went on a road trip. It was supposed to be gone about 3 nights, and we got snowed out of Columbus. Not snowed in, but it snowed from about just north of Dothan, Alabama, and Hattiesburg through the northern part of those states, and you couldn't. The roads were closed. You couldn't get back in, and here's my baby stuck with his daddy. He's a good one though, but that I realized that it's just not real. It's not a good for me. I wanted, being an only child, I wanted more children, and so although I loved coaching, I wanted a family and two head coaches coaching at different institutions and different sports. There wasn't a lot of family time. I mean, we took advantage of what we could, but I wanted more than one child. I know when we first got married, Gene said, well, how about 4 kids? And I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, can we just get one here first? And then I'll tell you if I want any more. But we have 3, thankfully. But that's what turned me into, I gave this a try because after I left the W and went, and he came down here, and I had to twist Raymond, I had to twist his arm to even go to the interview. He never wanted on the college level. And I said, well, my daddy said, and he was in school administration all his life. He said, if somebody thinks enough of you to ask you to come talk to him, the least you can do is go hear what he has to say. It doesn't mean you have to take the job. You have a right to say no. But if you don't go, you're not showing respect by not listening. And all the way from Columbus to Raymond, I've heard him talk about how I will not be there more than 5 years. I've never wanted to be on the college. Too much politics and college ball and everything you could think of that was negative. However, on the way back, it was like a 180. It was like, I don't have to go to all the basketball games, and I don't have to go to all the I could just be working, and there were a lot of positive things. And with Coach Buckner, he's such a godly man, and he was such a strong, godly leader, being us both being, under him. And by the way, he's from Starkville too. Mm-hmm. He was from Starkville, and you could just see God's hand in it. The president at Hines at that time was Dr. Clyde Muse. But anyway, we had our second child in October of 82. Yeah, 82. And this was 83. So she wasn't quite a year old when he got this offer. And so I stayed at home. I was at home the year she was born, and then stayed at home the next year, helping us all get through that transition. And in the spring, I would go over and watch, what do you do? You're used to being up and going. Now you got 2 kids, and you're in a small house, and you're just trying to get outside. And I'd take the kids over, and we would just watch practice. And it was... I never thought about. I mean, I know what offense and defense is, and I now know some of the positions. Or I knew a few of them then. But thinking about coaching football was never a goal. It never entered my mind. I was just trying to find something to do, and I knew by then that we just didn't need 2 head coaches. Not even at the same place. I think that's really hard. But I was kind of enjoying getting out and watching. And one day, Coach Buckner just mentioned to me, he said, "Why don't you come out there and help me coach receivers? I don't have a receivers coach." And I said, "Okay, coach, I'll get my stuff together." I thought he was kidding, and he kept. He said something to me 2 or 3 times, and so finally I told Gene, I said, "Tell Bill, he's tempting me now, so tell him to quit picking at me about that. I might just take him up." Really kidding. And I said, "I've been home 2 years and I'm getting kind of antsy, so just tell him to drop that." And Gene came in, 2 or 3 days later, and he said he's not kidding. And of course, my mouth hit the floor. And the president, Dr. Clyde Muse, Bill had already talked to him. I don't know who else he talked to, but it was just out of the blue. So he kept it really quiet. It was not going to be a full-time job, and Bill wouldn't release it to the media or anything, because he was giving himself time to figure out whether I could handle this or not, or whether I wanted to do it, or whether they wanted me to do it, or we had some area to back out of it if we needed to, and God made it work. So that's how I got into coaching football.
What about you, Gene?
Well, growing up, I really loved outdoors, hunting and fishing, and I thought in my mind I'd be a wildlife biologist. Till about my junior year, I got into chemistry class, and I began to rethink that. Either chemistry didn't like me, or I didn't like chemistry. But anyhow, I said, I was involved in all sports, and so really never had an off time during the school year. And all I could think about was, I had to work a lot harder in a chemistry class. I got to be able to concentrate on my athletics. But long story short, that was my one or two options: either coaching or being a wildlife biologist. And I guess God narrowed the choices down when that chemistry class came along. 'Cause I still don't like chemistry. I don't like math. There's not a lot of things I like. That was another reason I was thankful I went to East Mississippi, because if I got thrown in a college algebra class, Lord, I never would have got anywhere.
You mentioned Bill Buckner. Was a very good friend of mine too. I got to know Bill later in his life when I was the head coach at Liberty, and we kept in touch for a long time. But you're right, he's a great man. Well, let's go. You already mentioned Hines, and I think our listeners probably a normal question would be, before you two coached your first game together on the same staff, did you have any conversations about what your vision would be as a couple coaching on the same staff and how you would want to affect players?
Let me answer that question first. I was coaching defense. She was over there with those wide receivers.
It worked really well too.
And we didn't cross paths very much. I stayed out of her business. She stayed out of my business. Occasionally, when this first started, with both of us being assistant coaches, we would critique the practices in the game. But, my memory served me well. We didn't have any confrontation. Now, it was different when I became the head coach and she still coached receivers, because then I got over on offense. And I learned a lot of lessons around her.
I learned a few around you.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Dot, do you recall a conversation that the two of you had?
I'm sorry, what?
I said, when you had your first game together, did you recall any conversations that you and Gene had about maybe a vision the two you wanted to have together?
No. In fact, it worked. We never had any cross words that I remember, as long as he was on the other side of the ball. Those came along later when he became the head coach and he chose to become the offensive coordinator instead of the defensive coordinator. But it wasn't. We never talked about seeking employment somewhere else, or it. I was happy. I was glad I was not a head coach. I didn't want to be in charge and all that stuff. I've told him many times though that he better be glad, and this goes for me too, that we married each other, because at least I understood what about college coaching. And I mean, it's a 24/7 all year long. I mean, it's, especially in junior college, because you're recruiting constantly. I mean, it's just an ongoing, never ending, ending battle. And I would get frustrated because I would get a little selfish there and want some time. But he knew what he was doing, and he was very successful with it. And I told him, I said, and I should have said, instead of saying, you better be glad you married me, because a lot of women would not understand this. I should have been saying, it's a good thing we married each other, because we can have disagreements and get aggravated and sometimes mad, and you leave it on the field.
Now, we'll start with Gene first. Tell us about your coaching philosophy and your leadership style, and then what would you think players would say it was like to be coached by you?
What your butt gonna do?
Well, let's see. My coaching style, I guess the best way to describe that was I was driven as a coach, and certainly drove those players that I coached. I always believed that there was more that an athlete could give than they thought they could give. And I always had that philosophy, and I think I got it from a basketball coach by the name of Al McGuire when he was the head coach at Marquette. But I remember reading this about his practices. And his thought process is he wanted the intensity of practice to be at the level that it had to be in a game. And if that took an hour or if that took 2 hours, so my expectations of the players, whether we were in the weight room, whether we were on the practice field, whether we were in group meetings, team meetings, it was about business, and that business was trying to get it to a higher level than they thought they could ever get to. I remember some of our athletes, and one in particular that was John Copeland, who ended up being our first pick in the first round. I think it was the third pick in the first round with the Bengals after he finished at Alabama. And years later, he'd come back and he said, Coach, he said, when I left Hines, went to Alabama, and then went to the Bengals, practice was so easy. It was not as intense. He said, but the things I learned at Hines was what helped it make it easy, because whether we were on the field or off the field, it was about preparation. It was about anticipation. Just like if I had to come to a meeting, I had to be at that meeting 5 minutes early, being on time. And he said, I carry that over in my life beyond football. And so I've heard that over and over from different players, how they've used that coaching philosophy and applied it in their lives and in their families, which was certainly one of my objectives. And, another thing that I always intertwined in that was how God worked in our lives. And I remember every year, throughout the year, it wasn't an every day or every week thing, But taking a team, and sometimes had to use it on an individual level with dealing with a discipline issue with a player or a problem with a player, and that is that there are those that are in our lives that have sacrificed for us. And trying to get them to relate to that in terms of somebody in their family, because there's somebody in my family that sacrificed for me. You don't get where you get to by some accident. And there are those that have sacrificed, that have paid a price for the freedom that we have in this country. And then the ultimate sacrifice that I'd point them to was the sacrifice of the eternal freedom we have through the work of the cross. And I always intertwine those lessons, whether it was in practice, whether it was, early team meetings, during the year team meetings, whatever, helping them to remember those different principles that were all part of my overall coaching philosophy. And so that's what I like to think, that players that were coached by me recall that. And I remember a player that, I don't know, it's been several years ago, but he said, Coach, I went on and played in the Division I, the SEC, and played on the pro level. He said, but, my time at Hines, I never remember you ever using a profane word, ever using a curse word. And that was something that was always important to me, because where I grew up, that was sort of common in that little community. And, but it was something that I felt like that as I got into coaching, that was going to be a standard that I could communicate, no matter how intense or how upset I might be, I could communicate in such a way that I could always avoid that kind of language. And I always thought that, if we were taught to talk, we had to walk it. And the walking, it had to be a day by day, moment by moment process. Hopefully I answered that question. You asked me three things, and when you get 70, you sort of hard to remember all three things. Your dad ain't got there yet.
He's working his way up there. What do you think? What about you? What's your coaching philosophy and leadership style?
I was pretty intense, but I could see what I've always believed that a person cannot push themselves beyond a certain point, but another person, the coach or whoever, can push you further. And that's what I saw. He did the little things. It wasn't good enough that you made your block, even though you knocked somebody out of the way on your way, or it was, you do it the right way. We had a really good offensive line coach, J. Mike Smith, and he was very he does on a junior college level, offensive lineman. That was a real hard position to fill, but he could take those guys and they would be so disciplined at just doing coming off the ball, taking the right step, turning your hips the right way. All that was the steps that you go through, and it would make you successful. And that's what I thought Gene was doing in life. One thing I was really impressed with him was that he never talked, when he became the head coach, he never talked about winning a championship. But he preached, you want to be the best that you can be. And these are the things that you have to do in order to accomplish that. And if you don't walk off this field a little bit better today than you were yesterday, you've not pushed yourself far enough. I could see it and I could watch it. I could see how those guys responded to it, and as many times as I thought he might kill them running them to death, or they thought he might kill them running them to death, to see them respond, it built teamwork, it built leaders. It was things that they would carry through them, and so I used to make my receivers do cutaways. My philosophy was your job. Anybody can catch a pass that's a perfectly thrown pass. I'm looking for a receiver that can make an incomplete pass, turn it into a completed pass. So that means you got to give all your effort. Just you lay out if you have to. You don't drag around. And I didn't have probably no more than 6 or 8 receivers to work with at any one year, and I just tried to duplicate what he was doing because I could see how well you could. If you knew what he was doing, then you could see how he put it into action. It worked for him, so maybe it would work for me.
Yeah.
The one thing I like to inject real quickly is that, and this was real difficult to get players as well as your team to take ownership of, but no matter whether we were in season, off season, preseason, whatever, I talked to the players about, just like we practice, everybody practices. We would talk about climbing that mountain, being the best you could be, and hopefully you'd get to the top of the mountain if you really were the best that you could be. And trying to get them to understand that whether you were out there on the practice field, we go in the weight room, and a lot of those days they want to sort of go through the motions, and I remind them that everybody lifts weights. Everybody goes out there and runs. What separates you? What separates your team from the other team? What separates you as a team and as an individual athlete in January, in May, in August? What separates you when you face adversity of losing a game, not performing the best that you could perform? How do you respond to all that? And so all that was intertwined in my philosophy, and certainly it was always challenged because a lot of those kids, particularly those kids coming from inner city like Jackson, they're used to just playing on Friday night. Had all kinds of athleticism, practice, weights. I used to say this about John Copeland, who came from Valley High School down in South Alabama. When we got him, he was 6'4", 235. Most valuable player in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game on defense. That guy in the weight room, I used to tell people, I said the closest thing John Copeland got to the weight room before he came behind was when he walked by. I mean, why would that guy have to go in the weight room? I mean, he was already all-world. And
right.
But it wasn't that way when he came behind. His butt got right in there with the rest of them. And just like a quick example of that philosophy, we'd be doing a certain amount of weight percentage-wise for them, say, on squats. And I'd be the one over there at the squat rack. And then you get down there and say, you got 5 reps. And they are supposed to already set the weight, the weight. And then I get down there and I looked at the weight. And I already knew this guy, he's trying to get over today. And so he'd get to the 5th rep and I'd be behind him. I said, oh, you got another one. And we get to the 6th one. He thinks he's kicking the rack. I said, no, we got another one. We got another one. And by the 13th or 14th rep, his legs is just about shaking down there. He can't hardly hold the weight up now. And we racked the weight. I said, next time you won't get over. Those guys learn. Hey, when you step up there, you're supposed to get that percentage. You better get the percentage that's right, because that guy that's bald-headed, he's crazy. He is crazy. But you shouldn't have to do what you're supposed to do when you walk in here. Whatever, the same way on the practice field. I'd come down that hill every day, and I don't know how in the world God gave me the energy, because sometimes, and Ken knows that you're dealing with problems that might start the day before or that next morning. You're dealing with it all day long. You get ready, and here it is, 30 minutes before practice, and you think come down the hill, but you're not dealing with that problem. You got 50-something guys out there it's the tone of practice. And most of those guys want to go through the motions because they're thinking about game, or they're thinking about seeing Susie May or going to the cafeteria that night or whatever. And I'd come down that hill and I'd say, I'd start yelling, it's a great day to be an Eagle. And many a player would come back to me and say, Coach, I knew when you came down that hill that if we wasn't on that motivation, we think to get motivated. And so, when you ask that question, it's hard to give you a simple answer because mine is very complex. It tells a lot of different things on and off the field throughout the year. But that's a short version to that answer, that question.
Awesome. Dot, I was going to ask, what were some of the challenges of being a female coach to a male athlete? Obviously you see it's becoming more popular nowadays, but I'm sure there were some challenges that came your way. What was it like, and what were some of the ways you overcame them?
Well, it was just...
That's a book right there.
That's one reason we didn't say anything about it. We wanted to see how the guys would react. When I first started off, we ran what do you call it, pro eye or whatever. We didn't have one receiver, a tight end and a slot guy, and
2 receivers.
And so it was more run oriented, and I was learning, and we didn't use the receivers a lot. But as I grew, and when Gene took over, we started changing the offense, and everybody's going, to the spread offense and trying to figure out, all that out. And Coach Buckner felt like it would be a relationship between basketball and football, catching the football. And there is, but not quite, not like the secondary. I would think the secondary is more like, defensive, your basketball team running full court press. So my thing was, I'm coaching you as an individual to become a better player. And I just, I worked on, I had a saying, and most of my guys will tell you today that there's the 4 F's, and one of them is find the ball. That's the first thing you need to do is get your head around and find the ball. And once you find the ball, you need to focus on the end of the ball. Don't look at the whole foot. Don't focus on the whole football. Focus on that little. It's not really a dot, but you know how it sinks in a little bit on each end. You paint it with some white fingernail polish or something, and you can tell that's what you need to focus on. And you focus on it all the way into your hands. You're still looking at it. You ever watch tennis? It's funny watching the stands because you see this.
Right.
It's constant. And that's what I want to see out of your head. It's on the ball. You're focused on the ball. You're catching the ball. I want to see that. And so I came up with a few drills that I felt like incorporated that. And the first year, I don't remember having any kind of issues. Now,
let me tell you why it was. The first week she was receiver coach, all them guys were picking at them receivers. Oh, y'all got a girl, y'all got a woman for a coach. But it wasn't very long. They would come in after all the other players came in for showers and change. Those guys quit talking because those receivers came in with their tongue hanging out. I mean, she made it a point that nobody was going to outwork her in the position group. So it didn't take long for those players to have a tremendous amount of respect, but particularly those receivers. I mean, they would defend her and fight for her.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, Coach Buckner told me, he said, you can't be easy on them because they're going to be picked on, And
well, you heard that part.
And and I know that after, you have to go out, how many days you have to go out? 3 just in helmet and shoulder pads? I don't either, but I was trying to emphasize you give every maximum effort to go after that ball. If it's at all. You may have to dive for it and go out with your, outstretched hands, and you may not get it, but you have done everything you can do to possibly make that pass of completion. And Coach Buckner called me in after, I think it was a couple of days, and he said, they don't have on anything but a pair of shorts and a helmet. He said, you're making them dive on this dry ground. I want you to be tough, but you know, you might want to wait a couple more days before you get them diving. And I thought, well, in my mind, I thought, oh, okay. In basketball, you don't have on anything but a pair of shorts and a top, and you better be diving for the ball sometimes. So he just said you need to be tough early, and I had a pretty tough coach in college, and so that's what I tried to do. And it just, I don't remember having to ever send but one player off the field for talking back, and I just never allowed that in basketball. Or, you know, you can disagree with me, but there's a time and a place, and it's not while we're out here on the field. And so, anyway, it's
thanks.
Thanks
for sharing.
I don't know any other way to say it, but it had to be a God thing. It happened to work in my situation. But Gene was such a strong disciplinarian, I didn't have to worry about too much of that. You know, something he just.
Austin, let's jump to legacy.
Leon Lett, tackle for the Dallas Cowboys for years.
Yes.
He came from Fairhope, wasn't it? Fairhope, Alabama? Foley. One of those down there. And he was inducted into the Heinz Hall of Fame several years ago. And my dog.
Yeah. We're getting ready to wrap it up.
He said that, Mr. Murphy, you know what the first thing that comes to my mind every time I think about you or somebody asks me about what was it like with a woman on the sideline? I said, no, I had really forgotten about it. And he said, do you remember that time you caught me cussing coming off the field and you told me, I got you, buddy, you stay after practice? He said, you made me run up and down. We have a real steep hill that separates the practice field from the game field. He said, I thought I was going to die. That's the part. He said, you ran me to death. I decided I could control my mouth then, you know. Well, I didn't really remember doing that, but that's what he was pushing. So,
Austin, let's jump to legacy.
The dog is my child. You know, just a little in here.
All right, so.
Okay, anyway, he was crazy. I mean, you know, sometimes I thought he would get in the zone every time he hit the field. And sometimes I wondered myself. But he's been real successful. And I tried to pattern as much as I could after what he was asking for. So.
Awesome. So how would you describe to someone not from Mississippi the value of community college education and athletics?
Myself?
Let's start with Gene first.
I shared not long ago that this country, especially in the South, we don't realize how important community college education is for the majority of the students that come through the public education system, and especially in Mississippi, but I think in most states, it is the last bridge for a kid to have an opportunity. I didn't go to a 2-year school, I didn't go to a community college, but working at one and seeing how many lives that were touched, and mainly because of his sternness and everything, we have kids that left with a degree, an academic degree. Some of them were vocational technical, but they could go out into this world and earn a living and support a family and have a chance to go on to a senior college, many of them, that would have never had the chance had we not had community colleges. And I wish the legislatures in the state of Mississippi realized how important community college education is for a majority of the students that come through Mississippi high schools, because they have been the difference maker in sending a kid down a path where he can be or she can be a productive tax-paying citizen and understand, you know, hard work is just, I wish the legislature would award in this state would award more money to the 2-year schools because they struggle. But it's it to take that away, I think you would notice it almost immediately.
What about you, Gene?
Well, I'm a living product of what community college does for people. You know, like I said, hadn't been for little old East Mississippi, this old boy would have never made it through college. And of course, throughout my career, I wouldn't want to begin to count. I'm not talking about the guys that necessarily went on and played Division I football or went on and played professional football. I'm talking about from top of the totem pole down to the bottom, all the way to the managers, the trainers, whoever was working in the program. What a difference that opportunity had made for them, because many of them went out and were successful in life, not because of going on to senior college and participating in athletics, just the difference that community college made for them, whether it was in the academic environment, whether it was in the technical vocational program, whether it was just being involved in the athletic program. A tremendous impact on their life. And I'm just thankful that I lived long enough to be able to see it. Many of them coming back and talking about the difference it made in their life. And I tell people all the time, those former athletes, even managers, trainers, whatever, they don't come back and talk about, well, coach, you know, the championship we played. They talk about the different things that they learn in the community college setting, that they in our program there at Hines, how they applied it in their life and to their families. And that's been really rewarding for me.
Awesome.
Well, we're going to get ready to wrap it up. And one of the things we love to do is we call it final words or words of life to each other. So I'd like you, Gene, to be first, and any message that you would love to share with Dot, and then she would share with you and or our listeners, and then Austin will follow, and I'll close us.
Okay.
Well, you know, as we've said throughout, this whole career has been a God thing, and I've told Dot this many times. I could have never been a part of what I was part of without her help, because as you know, Ken, as a coach, the wife can make or break you in a lot of ways, particularly when you go home and things aren't going good on the field or in your season or whatever. And the foundation that God helped lay in my life in preparation for this coaching career, in preparation for me to become a husband, and me to become a father, and things even at 7 years of age, I'm still learning. And so my whole life been a process. And I just thank God every day for what He's given me the privilege to be a part of. And it's just been a part of it. You know, so many people were such an influence in my life, younger age and as I've grown older. And so it's been a whole lot of more people involved in it. You know, it's just like when you first came to East Central, me having the opportunity to meet you. It didn't take me long being around you that I knew it was something different about you. Different than a number of other people that were still coaching in the league, you know. And I always thought that it was the same thing that as athletes would come into our program, just like athletes come into your program, people analyzing folks. And I wanted him to be able to look at me real quickly to tell that there was something special about our program. And that something special was something that was going to be special for them to have a privilege to be involved in for their lives. And it was a godly thing that made it special. It wasn't me that made it special. It wasn't necessarily the other coaches that made it special. But it was God in the center of it all. And every time that God gotten out of the center of it, not by God choosing, but my choosing, not keeping my eyes focused on the task, the real task at hand in our life, then God will always find a way to get my attention, as we know God has in his sovereign way of doing it. So, that would be my overall context of how so many other people play such a vital role in my career, in my life.
Awesome.
Thank you, Gene. Dot, final words to Gene and our
I
guest?
agree completely with what he's saying, but as many athletes today, especially, it's all about self. I want to be good. I want to do this. I want to accomplish this. I want to do this, and you'll never have that satisfaction or comfort of knowing that you have done everything you can do until you can learn to give it all to God. And I'm so thankful for Gene, because it's true. A kid did not come through our program without at least hearing the gospel. We had devotionals and all, but so many have come back and said, Coach, you didn't think I heard what you said, but I heard every word you said. We had a kid that we signed one year that didn't have a very good attitude, and he was from this area, and I think we picked him up a little bit late, but anyway, he quit. He never made it. He was, I think, a good kid, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, I'm walking out to a game, and the guy says, I don't know if you remember me, Coach Dot, but I was the quarterback that came, and I quit on Coach Murphy, and I need to talk to him. This is before a game. I need to see him. I need to talk to him. Anyway, the kid came back, and he had found God, and he realized what was going on, and he came back to Gene to apologize for letting him down. And that's what it's about. It's when I pick up my phone and I get on Facebook or something, and I see a guy that came from a terrible home life, maybe didn't even know his parents died at a young age, and they're posting pictures of their wife and their grandchildren. These are fathers that have gone out, and they are taking time with their families to make a difference. I got a receiver right now that's out in Texas, and he posted the other day, he has worked hard with his son, and the kid he's a straight A student. His daddy wasn't a straight A student, but the difference was his daddy found at Hines, he found what helped you become successful academically, because we made him go to study hall and we kept check on their grades and that sort of thing. But now he's teaching his son, and his son is I think he's going into the 8th grade, and that's what's rewarding, that they're accepting the responsibility. They want to be a part. They want to make a difference. And coach, that's how coaching should be. We're in it for kids, but it seems and everybody wants to win, but nobody wins all the time. How do you handle it when you don't win? And where do you put the importance? And what's the glue that sticks it together? And in many cases, most all cases, it's seeing them become the men that they're becoming. That's the most rewarding thing to me. Having a kid that I worked with, I was also the academic advisor, and I had a kid that came from the local area around here, small school, that the first year he was at Hines, I saw nothing but the top of his head. He had no confidence, no encouragement, very polite, never said a word. Long story short, as not me, but Luann Askew and people in the study hall worked with him to develop him mentally. He began to see that he was smart and he could do this. And although he transferred to a D3 school, he played, and he's got a degree in something in computer. I mean, this kid, by his sophomore year, you wouldn't believe his smile. He had the biggest, brightest, Gene calls it a 22 smile. You know, that's why you should be coaching. And if you're coaching to win, you're losing if that's all you're coaching for. That's just not where it is. And people make the difference. And when I think about a guy that we won our 4th championship in a row back in the 90s. It was a grown man. He was crying on the field. And I said, Mr. Oates, are you okay? He said, very few people realize what it took to accomplish what y'all accomplished. But these are people that you're surrounded with that put effort and everything into your program for it to be successful. Just not you and the coaches. I mean, you know, it's everybody. And I think community colleges are important, but that's if you're not coaching to develop winners in life, coaching for the wrong reasons, in my opinion.
Thank you all for sharing your story today. It's really been a blessing to sit in here, and it just is such a great reminder of the high calling of what a coach is and the role that they play and how many coaches there are out in the country, you know, and, you know, your guys' story is so unique and cool and it's just so impactful. I mean, for a husband and wife to coach on the same staff and to pour into kids and to see, you know, lives change. And I mean, that has eternal benefits. And it was just really a great honor to meet y'all and get to hear both y'all's story. And I'm thankful for your service and loving kids along the way. For, you know, all of us are coaches, you know, sometimes we get so focused on our role and our kids and our team. We forget that in the grand scheme of things, all us coaches are serving all people across the country or world and stuff like that. And we're really on this big team of trying to get the best out of people and help them to grow and be better than they were when they came in. So I appreciate all you've done, and what a fantastic career both y'all had.
We're at the rocking chair stage of it now.
Well, let me say this
that's
first.
A great place to get to.
Gene and Dot, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, just your backing of our ministry and our relationship. It means a lot to us. And so thank you, first of all, for that. But I watched from sideline to the other side of the field for 10 years, Gene. I watched you coach and saw how your teams played, but I always respected the type of man you were. And, you know, I could tell there was something special. And what jumped out of me today between you and Dot, and I always had heard about you, Dot, but to have the chance now to really do a little research on your background, wow, I was overwhelmed. And then just to hear your sweet spirit today. But the two things that jump out at me when I think of the Murphy team is genuineness and humility. And those are two great traits of the spirit that are in both of you. And it just came out so clear in your story today. And I know your story will be a blessing to many of those that listen. And we're grateful for your willingness to share. So Austin and I just want to say thanks for allowing us to share your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.